Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to YouTube Live on the Aira channel. This is part of our Ramadan series in which we are covering the Go Rap. We are covering God's existence, oneness, revelation, and prophethood. And yesterday we actually covered not only the motivation for Dawah, which we covered in the previous session, but also an overview of Go Rap. What is Go Rap about? And with me again is Imran Hussain. Assalamu alaikum, Imran.
Walaikum salam, bro. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. Your location is very different to yesterday.
Yeah, I'm in a different room. I'm at home today.
Oh, you're at home.
For once.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you should try and limit your traveling anyway. So I know it gets a bit difficult trying to do live streams from home, but yeah. So how's the weather there? How's everything there? Is it in the UK? Is it hot? How's it hot?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, it's starting to get hot now. So we're getting into summer and the weather's been quite nice today, mashallah. But it's been quiet outside, which is a good thing. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer this year, bro. An interesting Ramadan as well, subhanAllah. So it's flying by already. It's day 3 today for us here. I think it's day 2 for you. And subhanAllah, it's going really quickly, man, like every year.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And there's something else that, fasting obviously is, in the hot weather, inshallah, there's more ajr, there's more reward. But I also found that fasting helps you have a clearer mind. Do you feel like this as well?
Yeah. I think so. Different people. So, for example, me personally, it works like if I don't eat, that's why normally, even outside of Ramadan, I don't do breakfast because it clouds my thinking. And when I don't eat, I can think very clearly. But Ramadan specifically, bro, it really flushes you out, subhanAllah. It clears your mind. You can think clearly, get a lot done without coffee, which is a good thing, mashallah.
Yeah, without coffee. That's one of the things that you open up the fast with, coffee, and you try and stay awake at night and stuff. So let's get into it. Yesterday we did the introduction to the Go Rap, right?
Yep.
We did why is the Go Rap important as a methodology. And today what we want to do is we want to get into initiation and uncomfortable questions. So why don't you give us a bit of a recap of what we covered yesterday?
Yeah, so yesterday basically we looked at the introduction to what the Go Rap was, and we wanted to sort of share what the whole method is, why it's so powerful, why it works. So we also touched upon why it's important to keep things simple anyway in the Dawah, and also why we shouldn't sort of worry about acquiring this huge amounts of knowledge, such as knowledge on Christianity, learning verses, other scriptures, memorizing other scriptures. Why we don't need to do any of this when we're giving Dawah, because Dawah is very simple. When it comes to the Dawah, when we talk about giving Dawah, it basically means to deliver the message of Islam to people, not to necessarily deconstruct what they have for them before you give them what you have, right? So, and that's the powerful thing about the message of Islam, is that it's so clear, it's so pristine, it's so pure, it's the truth. So when you give someone the truth, they can, if they're sincere and honest, they'll recognize it, no matter what they have been holding on to previously. So that's what we sort of outlined yesterday, and the Go Rap method itself was very powerful, because what it aims to do is cover the core concepts that we need to get across when it comes to talking about Islam and giving Dawah, which is God's existence. The G, the O is for oneness, the R is for revelation, the A is for or you can insert akhirah, afterlife, and the P is for prophethood. And those are the key things we need to get across when it comes to giving Dawah to people.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important for us to remind the viewers about our campaign, why we launched it, what we're doing. And I think we should be doing that in every live stream. So if you remember, we were having this discussion, Imran, about, a viral awakening, the campaign. And in the beginning, I was very hesitant when we were discussing this, because I was like, some people, they're going to see this as, why are you talking about religion during this time?
Yeah.
This is a bad time. It's the worst time to bring up religion. Well, that's what I thought. And then, you gave me some very good arguments for why actually, it makes sense. And alhamdulillah, it's really worked out well. So just give us a bit of a sort of recap on this campaign.
Yeah. So look, and the point you raised was quite valid, bro, because it is going to be, look, you can't please everyone, right? So whenever you're giving da'wah, it's inevitable that people are going to take people don't like the truth. Some people don't like the truth, right? They don't want to listen to understand the truth. So, oh, they may come across and say stuff like, you're an opportunist, you guys are trying to make the most of this bad thing that's taken place in the earth, and you're trying to capitalize on this. But no, look, at the end of the day, bro, if we truly and honestly believe this is the truth from Allah,
Yeah.
then there's no good or bad time to give da'wah. We have to convey the message. Obviously, there is things you consider, and you have the emotional intelligence when you're delivering the message to people. But more so now than ever, bro, we're in a situation where people are questioning life, they're questioning the purpose of life, they're questioning the meaning of their existence. They are cut off from all of the things they knew to be true, they knew to be the purpose of their existence, such as from a material perspective, especially to make money, to have a good job, to work up the ladder, to buy a new house, to buy this, that, and the other. Now, temporarily, people are cut off from all of these things, and they are forced to stay at home. And if they're going to be at home and they have nothing much to do, and they're cut off from all of the goals and aspirations, then they're inevitably going to be thinking about the purpose of life, the meaning of life, the deeper questions of life. And this has put people in a very reflective mood, and they're contemplating these big questions. And it's also, in some ways, this occurrence, bro, has humbled people as well, because this tiny little virus has popped out from nowhere, right, and has literally taken over the whole planet, and has literally shut down everything that we took so long building. And it's going to probably end up doing so much damage that we're going to spend maybe another couple of years rebuilding, or the world's going to take another couple of years rebuilding what we had economically, etc., etc. So it's a very humbling situation as well, that something so small and insignificant can do so much damage to the human being and what the human being has put in place. So that being the state of human beings, I believe that they are probably in the most perfect position to receive the message, so they can clearly at least contemplate the message in this time. Because all of that arrogance is removed, all of those barriers are now removed. We're not busy anymore, so we're just trying to deliver the message to people. And also, the truth is, bro, that the comfort and the peace and tranquility that people are looking for, especially now, they're not going to find it anywhere else. They're only going to find it in realigning themselves with their creator and the purpose of their life. And that is what Islam is. It's the final way that's given by God to humanity to remind them of who they are and why they are and where they're going. And that's what we're trying to essentially deliver to people, to non-Muslims, inshallah. And how we're doing it is basically online, because we're not out on the streets anymore. So we have a live chat service on the onereason.org website. It's onereason.org/AVA, where non-Muslims can come and engage with us. All of our chat agents, our outreach specialists, from around the world, are on the chat service now. So they're acting as chat agents, giving dawah every single day, 24/7, 7 days a week, mashallah. And we're encouraging Muslims to just get involved in the dawah online. Use your social media platforms, make videos, write posts, use the hashtag #AViralAwakening, and get the message out to as many people as possible, keeping in mind to be very, very sensitive and very, very extremely compassionate in your approach, because we should be anyway as Muslims, but especially in such sensitive times, we should be extra compassionate towards humanity, inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there's no better time to give the message of Islam than at a time when people are thinking about death, they're thinking about their loved ones, they're thinking about illness, they're thinking about financial problems. And that's really something, it gets a human being to be humble. And it makes a human being think about mortality. And that is the perfect environment to actually have a conversation, because the person is already ready. Now, when somebody is, I don't know, going off shopping and you're handing out a flyer, or you're posting something about the Quran online and they're on a video game website, they're in the wrong psychological state. Which is why, as du'at, we have to get people to think about the right mood that the other person needs to be in when conveying the message of Islam to them, right? So I think this definitely creates that. This definitely creates that sort of environment. Now,
how's in Pakistan, bro? how is the mood in Pakistan? Is it similar to all other places in the world, or is it like are people still out and about?
No, well, there's a very strong lockdown here. People were at home. Like I remember, I tried to walk into a shop and they wouldn't let me walk in because I didn't have a face mask on.
Yeah,
And I went to go buy something today, and the guy was squirting stuff on my hands. So yeah, I mean, people have taken it very seriously here. Of course, I'm only in the capital city. I don't know what it's like in the rural areas, like the villages and stuff, but. The cities, definitely, there is a strong feeling of a lockdown. People are taking it very seriously. And it's made people, I think it's made people here, Muslims, reflect about their life as well. Because at the end of the day, we all need reminders. A reminder benefits the believer. And yeah, we just have to keep that in mind. Now, Imran, in the Dawah, we get lots and lots of uncomfortable questions, right? We get uncomfortable questions. We get these questions about, you know, um, why is it that in Islam women have to wear the hijab and the men does not, right? Why is it that woman gets half the inheritance that a man gets? Why is it in Islam that you can't have a girlfriend, or you can't shake a hand with the opposite gender, or all these types of things? And then it goes to more uh, uh, uncomfortable examples to do with certain aspects of Sharia law, right? Now, putting aside the context of those things, whether those things are applied today, or putting aside all those things, lots and lots of uncomfortable questions. And there are people in the world who spend weeks learning how to answer one uncomfortable question. So the reason why we don't eat pork is, and they have all this scientific research, or the reason why women wear hijab and men don't is all of this. The reason why in Islam a man can marry 4 women but a woman can't marry 4 men, they try and give all these demographics, right? Is that our approach? Or do we tell people just go there and start answering these questions?
no. So we're trying to get people to do the total opposite of that. Because look, there's like we one thing that's clear and everyone acknowledges is that there's many ways of giving da'wah. There's not one way of doing things, right? Now, someone may argue that that approach itself is is a way of giving da'wah. Now, sure, of course, from some perspectives it can be, but is it the most effective way of delivering the message of Islam? Are
Yeah.
you utilizing your time in the most effective way possible, right? Now, especially most people are working full time. People are busy. You only have a very little time to give da'wah to people, and I would say that's not even to be honest, that's not even a valid excuse or a point, because even for us that we're doing this full time, even then we would still use the go wrap approach, because we want to make sure that every moment is spent in the most effective way possible, right? You can sit there and you can explain, for example, the inheritance law for 3 hours to someone, but you're not going to be effectively delivering the message of Islam, because they may leave with a better understanding of the law, right? Although they may still not agree with you for some other reasons, which we'll discuss about perspective. But the point is that, you know, you if they leave with an understanding of a specific law, they won't leave with an understanding of who Allah is, what the purpose of their life is, who the Prophet peace be upon him was, what the Quran is, what's life all about. They won't know the answers to these questions, so you haven't really given them da'wah. So what we're trying to do with the Go Rap is we're trying to get to that root, that foundation, and to establish that. Now, of course, we're going to get uncomfortable questions, bro. So how do we deal with them? That's the real question now. Yeah. So uncomfortable questions are going to come. People are going to give you uncomfortable questions. They're going to approach you. They're going to ask you. Even if you approach people, bro, and you have a discussion with someone, they're going to probably insert in an uncomfortable question somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So how do we deal with them? We have a very powerful and simple way of dealing with uncomfortable questions, right? Which is, first and foremost, acknowledge the person for asking you the question, right? It's very important. Make them feel comfortable. Make them feel like they've done the right thing by approaching you. You don't want to offend people and make them feel uncomfortable, because if you do that, then they won't approach people. They won't approach another Muslim in the future. So acknowledge them. Say for example, John at your workplace comes over to you and says, I was watching a documentary on BBC the other night, and I saw, you guys, the women get, a certain amount of inheritance and the men get so much more. Why is this the case? Why is this inequality, etc., etc.? Now, you could try answering it, right? Well, there's a problem you're going to face when you try answering uncomfortable questions, which is if you answer one question, it'll lead to another question. And you answer another question, it'll lead to a third question, then a fourth question, and a fifth question. And this happens because there is a fundamental issue that's not being addressed. One of those fundamental issues is that the person that's asking you the question, the non-Muslim that's asking you the question, they have a particular context. They have a particular lens that they see the world through, that they understand reality through. So they apply that lens to Islam too. So when they come across, for example, certain laws in Islam, they are going to observe them through their lens, their outlook on life, right?
Mm.
Now, most people we come across today, bro, they're going to come from a secular, maybe a type of atheistic type of background, right? And they have this sort of liberal conception of equality, etc., etc. So from their perspective, bro, no matter how well you articulate certain things to them about Islam, they are not going to accept it. They're not going to be satisfied, right? So the right thing to do in that situation is to try to give them the right foundations, the right lenses, right? It's like, I'll give you a quick example. If you see the wall behind me, bro, it's like a whitish color. Imagine it's white for a second, yeah? Now, if you and everyone on this live stream right now is wearing clear glasses and you're looking at that wall, what color do you see that wall, right? You're going to see it as white because you've got clear lenses and you see the wall as white. Now imagine I come in and I'm wearing red glasses and I look at the wall. What color do I see the wall? The wall is red for me, right? Now, you can try convince me the wall is white. You can spend all day. Are you going to be able to fully convince me the wall is white? The answer is no, because my first-hand experience is what? I see red because my lenses are red, right? So the best thing you could do for the person is to encourage them to take off their glasses and give them the clear glasses. Give them the right set of lenses. So what are these right set of lenses that we need to give to people? They are the foundations of Islam. They are the bread and butter, those core concepts. So one of the foundational concepts is understanding who Allah is. Once you understand who Allah is, a lot of things will fall into place, right? A lot of, like we said yesterday, bro, if you know Allah knows all, He's the all-knowing, He's the all-powerful. Therefore, whatever Allah tells you to do, you do it because you know He knows best and He wants best for you. So again, foundational lenses and concepts that we need to give to people. See them as lenses, see them as concepts, whatever you want to see them as, right? Now, by going to the foundations, bro, not only do you give people the right lenses, but you're also giving them effective dawah because you're giving them what they actually need, not what they want, right? So that's the power of this whole approach. Now, how do you do this? A practical way of doing this quickly. So say John comes to you, says, I watched this documentary, saw this law, these laws in Islam, they're barbaric, it promotes inequality, etc., etc. First, acknowledge, John, that's a brilliant question. I really appreciate the fact that you asked me this question. However, before I give you the answer to this question, John, or before I engage with this question, I need to give you some of the basics of Islam, the fundamentals of Islam, because they will help you better appreciate the answer to your question. So yeah, if you have a couple of minutes, let's sit down, let's discuss that. See, what you're going to do now, you're taking control of the conversation, number one, right? Which is very powerful because now you're going to direct the conversation to where it needs to go. Number two, you're also, by doing this, you're going to have done a quick check on John if John is really sincere and honestly wants to listen. Because if John is there to just debate with you and argue with you, as soon as you tell him that you want to talk about foundations, he's like, forget you, I don't want to talk to you, right? I want to know the answer to my question, right? So it acts as a sifting mechanism as well. Number three, now you're going to really take the conversation to where it needs to go, which is effective dawah, basically telling them about Allah, the purpose of life, etc. So that's what we're essentially trying to do and how we deal with uncomfortable questions.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So
I know there's a lot there. I know I've like thrown out a lot of ideas and concepts there, but maybe we can flush them out a bit now, inshallah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And the way I'm thinking about it is fundamentally we're going back to the logic of the Gorab, which is God is all-knowing, human beings are not all-knowing, therefore human beings should submit to God. Because we have, say, green glasses on, the glasses of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, they have red glasses on, which is not that. It's liberalism, secularism, Christianity, whatever it is. And then when it comes to something which they don't understand, this thing morally doesn't make sense to me, this thing logically doesn't make sense to me, or whatever it is, you have to get them to take their glasses off and put on the Islamic glasses. And you need to show them that La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, Gorab, it makes sense. If that's true, everything, if Islam is true, everything from within Islam is fine. It just makes complete sense, right? It's not that you need to justify every single thing in Islam. So for example, This is the month of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month of charity. People give charity. We share. The Prophet ﷺ said that charity doesn't decrease wealth, right? Logically, when you think about it, when you're giving money, your bank account goes down. You may even find that if you're regularly giving charity, you just happen to have less money than others, and you happen to not wear as many nice clothes as other people, and other people are maybe doing better than you or whatever. So logically, it may not make sense. But if we show them the Gorab, if we show them, look, this is why we believe in God, oneness, revelation, prophethood, then if Islam is true, then everything from Islam is true. So if God exists, He is one, He's the one who revealed the Quran, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, is his messenger, then if the Prophet said X, whatever X is true. If the Prophet said charity doesn't decrease wealth, charity doesn't decrease wealth. If the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that, praying to God in the last third of the night it's very powerful and it works, and that's the best time, then that's true. We don't need to give some metaphysical explanation of a third of the night, and when it's a third of the night in Australia, it's not a third of the night in the UK. We don't need to get into this. We just do a very simple thing. Prophet said it, we follow it. But first, why is Islam true?
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the point of Gorab. We are just highlighting why Islam is true, and this is very easy to do. And once you've done that, bro, any sincere, honest person would recognize, okay, well, if Islam is true, then whatever Islam says must be true, even if I can't make sense of it based on my limited understanding or my certain upbringing or my sort of environment. That's fine. That's just my limitations, right? That's not something wrong with Islam. That's my personal inability to understand things fully or grasp things fully or understand the wisdom behind everything. That's the humble position, bro. As soon as you have that type of humility, the doors of guidance are open then. Everything will fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something else to note here is you may give an answer which you consider to be logical, right? Somebody says, why is it? I mean, remember what we're doing is we're saying every single time someone asks you an uncomfortable question, say to them, thank you for the question. I understand that's a question that's, it's a question that a lot of people ask, and there are a lot of questions about Islam. But in order for you to understand the answer, I need to first explain to you some fundamentals of Islam. When you explain the fundamentals, then you simply say whether it's hijab or it's this or it's that. We do this because God said so, right? Mm-hmm. However, let's look at the converse approach, the opposite approach. The opposite approach would be, well, why does a man have the ability to marry 4 women, but a woman doesn't have the ability to marry 4 men? Somebody may say, well, there are more women in the world than men, right? Mm. Biologically, women are more likely to survive than men. Men die more in, war. Men also happen to die in pub fights. Men just happen to die in many tragic ways, right? Even I heard, I can't say this for sure, but there's something I heard that the immune system of women is stronger and more women survive than men. There's all this type of stuff out there. But the war thing is definitely true. We know that, right? Men fight in war and they fight on the street, and men are more likely to die in car accidents as well. So you have more women than men. Okay, fair enough. Now, if we give people only that logic, so why is this thing in Islam? Because there's more women than men. Then somebody could turn around and say, well, hypothetically in a country like, I don't know, India, right? There's more men than women, right? And in certain villages, they have a problem with finding brides because the men are more than women. So according to the logic, there's more men than women, so a woman should be able to marry 2 men, if you use that logic. Yeah, it's better to simply say, look, at the end of the day, this is coming from our Creator, so we believe it. Simple. It's coming
Yeah,
from us.
otherwise we're adding in things that Allah didn't say Himself, right?
Yeah.
We're just trying to make up. We're trying to make up logic which God didn't give us Himself, right? So, and then inevitably you're going to land yourself in trouble that way, because you're going to bring up something. You're going to say something which you're going to eventually end up contradicting yourself somewhere. Why
Yeah.
put yourself in that position? The most
Yeah.
simplest thing to understand is that there are many things, even as Muslims, that we don't understand the wisdom of fully, right? We don't, right? It's just a fact, and you have to humble yourself and know that the one if I can understand the one that's telling me to do this, that's all I need to do.
Yeah.
That's all I need to be concerned with. Understand the one that's telling me to do what he's telling me to do. Once I understand him, then what he's telling me to do, I should just do. It just makes sense. That's the relationship between us and God. It's not God tells you to do something and you don't do it until you fully understand that thing, and then you decide whether you do it or not. No, that's arrogance. That's not the relationship between us and our Creator. You
Yeah.
know, that may be the relationship between us amongst each other in some respects or from some ways, but not between man and God. And that's a fundamental principle that we need to understand. And once we can understand that, then everything else falls into place. And like you said, it's reasonable faith. It's not blind faith,
Yeah.
right? Where it's reasonable from the perspective that we are using our intellectual faculties to come to the conclusion that God exists and understand certain realities about God, such as that He's all powerful, He's all knowing, He wants best for His creation. And then after understanding and acknowledging these intellectually and rationally and intuitively, then whatever God tells us to do, you just obey. And in obeying and submitting yourself, that's where you find peace and tranquility. And by not doing that, all you have is agitation and frustration and anxiety. That's all you're going to
Yeah.
end up with.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's powerful about this GoRap approach is that we just get straight to the issue. The fact is, Imran, if I come to you and I say, Imran, you're fasting, and hypothetically, right, here is a narration of the Prophet ﷺ from Imam Bukhari which says you should do this action 5 minutes before opening your fast. Hypothetically, I find something and it's authentic. No one's ever heard of it before. Why it come out? You're not going to say, why 5 minutes? Like, what is this thing? How does it make? You're going to say, did the Prophet say it? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That is submission. That's submission. So you basically know Islam is true, you submit. When we start answering these questions, a man is allowed to marry 4 because of this and that, we're giving a false impression of Islam. Islam fundamentally is a religion of submission. Once you recognize it's true using your logic and your fitrah, it's natural to you, then you submit. It's not the case that you will understand the wisdom behind everything. You'll understand the wisdom behind eating pig. You'll understand the wisdom behind, for example, there's studies to show that having a bit of red wine is good for you, right? It's good for your heart. We may find out 10 years from now, cannabis is good for you to, I don't know, good for people who have anxiety, right? Could be anything. But and that particular science or whatever it is, that study, that's going to contradict Islam. And what are we going to do? We're going to be like, okay, this thing makes more sense. No, if the Prophet said these types of things, alcohol or anything that covers your ability to think, like cannabis, if we're taught by Islam that these things are not allowed, they are not allowed. It doesn't really matter if somebody's coming and telling you the opposite, because the ultimate authority is Allah. If you have 3 people that come up to you, 3 friends, one friend always speaks the truth, never lies, always verifies what he's doing, the other 2 are always sloppy. Yeah, you're going to trust the trustworthy one, even if they're coming to you and they're giving you different pieces of information. Who's more trustworthy than Allah? Allah says, whose testimony is greater than Allah's? Yeah. So at the end of the day, whether something makes sense to you or it doesn't make sense to you, recognize if Islam is true, that's all that matters. And this is why non-Muslims, we should not be going off into tangential conversations about, well, in the 7th century Arabia, women had these rights that they don't have in the 21st century, and this particular law exists because of this reason. Just speak about why Islam is true, and everything else is a sideshow. It's absolutely irrelevant.
That's essentially the approach, bro. That's what we're saying. Yeah, there may be occasions, bro, where someone's too weak to follow the truth, right? But then they should just acknowledge that. They shouldn't try to find an excuse. And sometimes we try to cover it up by trying to be all rational. Oh, this doesn't rationally make sense. No, what doesn't make sense, what isn't making sense is that you know you can't do something because out of weakness. So just accept that. That's the look. No one's going to be perfect. Yeah, there's going to be things that we know. The Prophet ﷺ, there's so many du'as the Prophet ﷺ taught. Do we memorize all of them? Do we recite all of them at the right times? No, we don't. I
Yeah.
don't. Right? It's out of sheer weakness, and that's what it is. It's not. I'm not going to sit there now and try to find a logic as to why that was incorrect. But sometimes we end up doing this just to justify our inabilities to ourselves sometimes, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't fall into that trap, because that's the worst thing we could do.
Absolutely. Something I was thinking about when it comes to our lives, right? Our lives are very, very short, and we need to be very productive with our time. Yet when it comes to conversations, dawah conversations, and I've done this myself, and I'm definitely guilty of most of the things that we shouldn't be doing in the dawah, including one of them being to beat around the bush and to just go off on tangents and this and that. When the best thing to do is to simply get to the point. What is the point you're trying to convey? And at the end of the day, you talk to somebody about women's rights, you talk to them about Sharia law, you talk to them about historical events, you talk to them about how Islam, is not a religion that's in the media. When you do all these things, you have not conveyed La ilaha illallah.
Yeah.
You've done everything but that. So if you look at a snapshot of your conversation and somebody used to write a transcript of it, how many times are you mentioning Allah, Messenger, hereafter? How many times? If not that much, you're not really conveying Islam.
Yeah.
To convey Islam, you talk about Allah and you talk about Allah's Messenger. It's not about other things. It's not about politics. It's not about this. It's not about that. And that's extremely important to understand. I have to tell myself off. I'm like, what are you doing? Don't do this. Just
but to be honest, I think it's a good clarification point brought here. Like, they will see, like, okay, Subboor's talking about keeping it simple, God's existence, oneness, but we've seen him in Speaker's Corner talking about evolution and this and that. But it's very important to draw the line here. Yeah, because
time.
No. But the thing is, I think there is that nuance there, bro, which is what we're talking about here specifically is the most effective way to deliver the message of Islam to someone else. That's what we're talking about here. So if you're talking about giving dawah, what we're talking about in this particular show, this live stream, the course of this live stream is, okay, what is the most effective way of doing that? That's not to say that there isn't other elements of delivering the message of Islam or giving da'wah, different facets, different dimensions of it. There are, but if you best way to see is like this. Imagine a number of circles. You start with the smallest or the core, and then there's other circles that branch out of that circle, right? And there's like circles upon circles. The core, what we're talking about here is the core. If you want to talk about effective da'wah, this is the way to do it, this core. Now, obviously, outside this, that there are different dimensions, there are different circles that surround it, and there are those elements. So when you talk about in Speaker's Corner with evolution, there is a specific reason you do that, and you are dealing with that issue. But is that the most effective? Is that the core of giving da'wah? No, it isn't. But is that an element? Yes, it is. So what we're talking about here is that specific core. Because I'm assuming most people here, they want to know, okay, if I want to get involved in da'wah, how do I do it in the most effective way possible? Well, this is it. The Go Rap method brings you right to the core to talk about those core fundamentals, and that's what we're sharing here. Because they'll see me, I've got like some of the stuff on my channel, it deals with nihilism, it deals with meaning of life without God. Again, it's one of those outer circles which is there to facilitate this core. Basically, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to facilitate that core with this stuff.
And sometimes you have to cut the chase and just say, okay, like, why don't you believe in God? Just be direct. And even sometimes speak to people about, well, if you think about your life, how long are you going to be alive? Is this even important? Some people may come up to you and they may think there's a question which is extremely important, but in reality, it's not going to be important at all. It's not going to be important at all. So Sheikh Fahad Taslim, he's joined us, and he said, in terms of rationality, so you are saying that we should not expound upon reasons behind acts in Islam. Let's put that question to you, Imran.
So read it again, sorry.
Okay, in terms of rationality, we know behind everything there's a wisdom. So Allah gives a wisdom. Allah has a wisdom behind, say, alcohol, hijab, pork. There is wisdom behind everything that Allah does. So are we saying in the dawah that we don't expound upon the reasons behind acts in Islam?
No. So we should wherever we can, and if we have the knowledge. But what we're talking about here is, so when we're talking about just getting the core message across, and that's what we're encouraging most people to do. Most people are not going to be specialists like, mashallah, Sheikh Fahad on certain specific topics, mashallah, or yourself with evolution. So we're talking. I know. So what we're talking about here is, okay, if someone is someone that, you know, has a regular life, they're doing the 9 to 5, they're working, they want to get involved in the dawah, they're thinking of how do we effectively get the message across to people. This is the best way to do it, which is not to go into expounding on certain specific elements or aspects of Islam, initially at least. Talk about the core. Once they understand the core and they accept it, if they still have questions, and this is what we teach in the Go episode, if they still have questions about, okay, well, why this law, or why that law, that's when I will get Sheikh Fahad's number and I'll say, here's your man, call him, message him, and he will give you that information, inshallah. So then you do. So what we would do, and we'll get to this at the end of the course. So say you're in a dawah conversation, John has a question about certain, I don't know, about certain aspects of the fiqh of fasting, for example, yeah? Okay, I don't know it. I'm a regular Muslim. I don't know the details about fasting. But this is a dawah opportunity. So I'm going to say, John, that's a brilliant question. I'm going to try to help you out with that question. But before I do that, if you don't mind, can I share some of the basics of Islam with you first? John agrees, sits down with you, have a half-an-hour discussion, tell him about God's existence, oneness, revelation, prophethood. He agrees to all of these things. Alhamdulillah, brilliant. Okay, he may want to become Muslim, but he still has that question. Why? I want to understand why you guys, you know, start fasting at sunrise and stop fasting at sunset. And that's the only barrier. Okay, am I going to say, no, John, you don't need to know? Of course not. We're not going to say that. John, okay, I'm going to try to get you the answer to that question. Here's one of my dear friends, one of our ustads, Sheikh Fahad. Here's his number. He's all the way in Houston, America. Contact him. He's going to give you the answer. So if you don't know the answer, get them in touch with someone that knows, basically, right? Don't leave them hanging.
Yeah, so what we're trying to convey here, and what Sheikh Fahad is conveying to us as well, is that, look, at the end of the day, we all know Allah is wise. And behind everything Allah does, there's a wisdom. Yeah?
Yes.
But that should not be a reason for us to think that we always have access to that. And we should always go back to Islam is true, therefore everything Allah does, it does with wisdom. Because it may be that a non-Muslim has a question and we use the opportunity to give them Islam, because you always have to do that first before you try. Then they say, okay, why is it in Islam that we're not allowed to eat pork? And say the brother or the sister who are conveying Islam, they basically say, here's the reason why, reason X. Well, firstly, we don't know why Allah forbade us certain things. Right? Other things we know, some things we don't. So if anything, they'll give an answer. Maybe that non-Muslim will be satisfied, maybe they won't be satisfied. But what they should be satisfied with is, if this is true, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't really matter. What matters is...
Yeah, to be honest, bro, some people are inquisitive. That's human nature, right? Like, we want to understand the wisdom behind certain things. There's no problem in inquiring. Like, keep learning, right? If you like, it's a beautiful thing, right? We, like, for example, and Sheikh Fahad, mashallah, again, is a brilliant example of this. Yeah. You know, he's someone that's really, mashallah, studied the Quran in some depth. Yeah, he's gone into it. It's because he's curious. He wants to understand the depth and the wisdom of what Allah is saying in His words, in His book. Now, it's not wrong to do that. Absolutely do that, but do that with the right principles in mind. You know, that being here, what we're trying to highlight, there will be certain things that are just going to be beyond you, that you have to therefore humble yourself sometimes and recognize there is wisdom behind this. It's just I don't have access to it right now, right? And just because I don't have access to it, it doesn't mean there isn't any wisdom there, right? It's it's having that humble approach with the right foundations, and then go on your journey of inquiring and trying to understand as much as you can. You know, some people are more inquisitive than others. Some people will be like, fine, okay, God told me to do this, I'm going to do this. I don't want to understand it, I'll just do it. That's fine as well. But if someone wants to understand it and reflect upon it, then by all means, that's if anything, that's more of a virtuous thing to do than to just to sit there and do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a question which is similar to the sort of questions that we were getting yesterday, which is how to give dawah to Hindus. And we get this regularly. We're trying to explain the GoRap, and we have a particular program, and then someone says, yeah, but how do you give dawah to a Christian? How do you give dawah to an atheist? How do you give dawah to a Hindu? How do you give dawah to a Jain? How do you give dawah to a Sikh? As if you need something different for that. So what's the answer? How do we give dawah to other people?
Oh, the GoRap. The GoRap is the answer. The GoRap is the way you give dawah to Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, whoever, everything that walks, basically. That's what we're trying to say. No, but human beings, right? That's the and jinn. The message of Islam is the same for every single human being, no matter what background they come from. Because look, what we're doing through the GoRap, you're talking about God's existence. Okay, now we're going to get into this later, but I'll just give you a bit of a taster. So, for example, say you're talking to a Hindu, yeah? Now, does the Hindu believe in God or not, generally speaking? They believe in God, right? Hindus also believe in God, a creator. Okay, so would you start with G then? Not necessarily. They believe there's a God, but you will definitely focus on the oneness. The O becomes the focus, especially with Hindus, because they may believe in many gods, right? So go into the oneness, talk about the oneness of God. And this is essentially where the essence of Tawheed lies now for this Hindu, which is the clear and pure understanding of the oneness of Allah, right? So focus on the oneness, clarify why Allah is only one. There is no other. He's one and alone. There is no, 100 gods or 200 gods or 300 gods or 3,000 gods. There's only one God. So you go into the oneness and you clarify that, and that is where the sweet spot of your dawah is to the Hindu at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Whoever it is, the GoRap works. Whoever it is, the government works. Just remember that. We repeat this again and again, but we still have the question that comes up. But what about the Jewish person? What about the Sikh person? No, the GoRap works on everybody.
Okay. Of course, bro.
Yeah, Zulu Romeo is basically asking, and this is to do with uncomfortable questions which are false, right? This is something we haven't covered yet. So what would you do when a person says the Prophet, peace be upon him, is a war mongrel, and you get this type of thing? Let me extrapolate out. Islam says, you blow up buildings, you kill people. Islam says this, Islam says that. So they're not asking an uncomfortable question which is true. They're saying something that's false. Can we say, in order for you to understand,
No, so this is where that subtle shift is now. So if it's what you would call a crazy question, or it's just a strange question, right? It has nothing to do with Islam, right? It has nothing to do with true Islam. Then straight away dismiss it. Say, look, that's not true. We don't want to eat your babies. We don't want to, capture your kittens and your pets and sell them in some, underground market or something. This has nothing to do with Islam. Completely dismiss strange allegations or strange ideas. Thank you for asking me the question, but let me just tell you straight away, this has nothing to do with Islam. However, and then continue, don't stop there. However, I'm sure you may have other questions. I'm sure you may come across other stuff in the future. So if you have a couple of minutes, let me share some things with you about Islam, which will really help you better appreciate Islam going forward. And then go into your dawah conversation, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think what we need to keep in our minds is that you will always have people asking questions, and they may really sincerely believe that those questions are important. But if we know deep down those questions are not important, then we don't entertain them. There's a question here which is exactly that sort of question. Yeah. So, Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers. An atheist asked me, how do you know that God is saying the truth? How should we respond to such a question? I mean, this is exactly one of those perfect questions that's like...
Yep. So here, bro, I'll be honest. Here's what I would do, yeah? The question is, how do you know God is telling the truth, right? So the first thing I'm interested now, just from his question, like analyze the question, analyze what people are saying to you. The very first thing is what emerges from his question is it seems like he already acknowledges God, right? Because he's assuming God for the question. How do you know God is telling the truth, right? So ask him the question, do you believe, okay, so do you believe in God? If he says yes, then move on to oneness, right?
Yeah.
Or you may go from God, in this case, from God, straight to revelation or straight to prophethood. Because, for example, the prophethood, as we will see, for me personally, bro, the most powerful part of the Go Rap is the P.
Yeah.
The prophethood section, bro, because if you can establish prophethood, which you can do so easily, subhanAllah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the Prophet ﷺ such a clear evidence for Islam. Establish prophethood and everything else is true, right? If you go backwards, everything else is true. So if you start with P, automatically, as soon as you establish P, the Quran is true, then whatever the Quran says is true, therefore God exists and God is uniquely one, right?
Yeah.
It's all covered. Whereas if you go the other way, you have to do each point, GORAP, which is fine as well. And that's what we recommend because you're dealing with what's most important first. But if you prove prophethood, it proves everything. So in this case, this specific case, I'll ask, okay, do you believe in God? If he says yes, then maybe in this case, I'll go straight to prophethood, say here, okay, here's why Islam is true. Prove prophethood, and then you can just go from there. And then if the Quran is true, it's from God. And if you understand who God is, then what God says must be true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
By the very definition of who God is, God does not lie. God does not make things up.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's also something else interesting here, which is that when we are trying to convey the essence of Islam, and we're avoiding these uncomfortable questions, and we are getting to the root of the issue. Thank you for asking the question, why do Muslims wear hijab? In order for you to understand the answer, I need to explain to you the foundation of Islam. Do you have a couple of minutes? Whatever they say, you bring it back to that. Okay, now that you do that, and then you go over the Qur'an, then you simply say, okay, so your initial question, whatever it was, because God said so, and we believe this is rational to follow God. One thing which is really powerful about this approach is it's so liberating. You know exactly what to do. It's simple, but it's so profound. That's one of the things that I found that was so profound about the Go Rap, because it's the one answer to every single issue. Somebody says X, you know where you need to take them. Somebody says Y, you know where you need to take them. Someone says Z, you know where you need to take them. You're not confused. And Dawah no longer becomes a specialist, elitist club. So you can only give Dawah if you are as good as Muhammad Hijab, right? You can only give Dawah if you're only as good as whatever, right? That goes away, and you start thinking, no, actually, you can give Dawah being a normal person. And what's powerful about the Go Rap, God's existence, oneness, revelation, and prophethood, you can make it your own, right? You can make it your own. You can give your own examples for God's existence, your own examples for oneness and revelation and prophethood. And here's the other thing which I want to touch upon in the time that we have left. If you convey the Go Rap, you've done your job. This is something we didn't really cover before. But don't look at people rejecting what you're saying as a reason to doubt whether the methodology that you're adopting is good or bad. This is a common mistake. And I've had many people come up to me and say, I tried this argument, person's not convinced. Or I tried this methodology of Go Rap, I did this, I did that. It's not about whether it works. It works from the perspective you've given the message, and that's good enough. If the person takes Shahada, accepts it, or if the person says, it doesn't really make sense to me, I don't really agree. At the end of the day, guidance is in Allah's hands. And this is extremely important to understand. People think, well, the person didn't accept Islam, so the Go Rap doesn't work. It's not about that. It's about you just conveying the call.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. So look, I think the key points people need to take away from these past episodes is this. Number one, really understand what it means to give da'wah to someone, which is to invite someone to Allah, to invite someone to people to recognize that they were created to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're calling people back to the worship of Allah. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
If we really understand that, the next step is now, how do I do that in the most effective way possible? So what we're saying here is that the best way to do that is to stick to the basics. Talk about God's existence, oneness, the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ, the purpose of life. Just talk about these core concepts, right? And by doing so, you would effectively deliver the message. Now, that means you don't need knowledge about everything, which makes your life so much easier. You don't need to memorize the Bible. You don't need to learn about atheism and secularism and all of these types of philosophies and ideologies. It makes your life so much easier, right? All you need to do is to deliver the simple message of Islam. And you have to really understand, if you really believe this and you understand this now, this goes on to what you just said. If you truly believe this is the right approach, which we should, right? Because I don't see any way around this. If you truly believe this is the right approach, then regardless of what the reaction of the people is, it doesn't mean anything. If they accept or reject this in the hands of Allah, you should be comfortable and confident in the knowledge that what you have done or tried to do is the best for them, which is to give them the core concepts and the basics. And also with this, what we're going to cover in the next few episodes, now this is the content, this is the theory, right? But this has to be cushioned now, bro, with emotional intelligence and the best characteristics possible, because that's your delivery mechanism, right? So if you get these two things right, what we're talking about here, the core concepts, the basics, the go rap, which is the theory, and then the emotional side of things, the characteristics, and you keep these two things together, bro, that's it. That's the best you could do.
Yeah,
right? There's nothing else you need to worry about.
And I think it's important to also mention, we've covered obviously uncomfortable questions for this session thoroughly enough. So it's important to touch upon related points. Sincerity is very important, right? So when you're talking to somebody, if you really think to yourself, this is Bani Adam, they're just like me, and you really think, I want this person to be guided, and also you do it sincerely for Allah, that has a huge impact. You may not think about the impact that it has. You may be like, okay, it's an obvious thing. But in life, the problem is most human beings don't do what's obvious, right? So when you're conveying, think of it from that perspective. Think of it from the perspective of, okay, what is the point of me speaking to this person? Why am I even doing this? And when you start questioning yourself, then you start to realize, okay, so I need to talk to them in a way that I would talk to, a gentle elderly person, like with respect, with honor. And, you're trying to, convey Islam to them in a way that it's not insulting. And, these things are very, very important. For example, you're talking to a Christian, right? So you just have to keep in mind, well, their parents were Christian and their parents were Christian, and they probably have this affinity to Christianity. They may not practice Christianity, but the fact that their parents were Christian. So when you start giving them examples like, well, what's the difference between Christianity and Islam? Well, there's a lot of similarities first. We both believe in the Abrahamic God. We both believe in Revelation. We both believe Jesus will return. And, Christianity is like a jacket which has some fitting problems. Islam is those adjustments. At the end of the day, you're not converting from Christianity to something wholly different. You're converting from Christianity to Islam, and you're already taking things with you, revelation, belief in God, and this type of stuff, and telling them things like Mary's mentioned in the Quran. And, these things, these psychological things are so, so, so important, right? And you will develop more of this when you're more sincere, when you start to think about how you can psychologically impact that person in a positive way.
Absolutely. It's having that genuine concern for the person you're speaking to. Don't see them like a robot. See them as a human being that deserves to have what you have, and it's your responsibility to give them what you have and deliver that in the clearest way possible.
Yeah.
You have to have that in mind. If you genuinely have concern, this is where empathy comes into it, bro. Is to have genuine empathy towards someone. Now, empathy I like to see in two ways, bro. One branch is cognitive empathy and one is emotional empathy, right? What I mean by cognitive empathy is try to get yourself into their head and think what they're thinking. What is it that's going on inside their head? What are the barriers? What's going to prevent them from accepting what you're saying? What is preventing them? Where do they stand? What have they gone through? Try to think what they're thinking. And then the emotional empathy is try to feel what they're feeling. And if you go really try to do these two things with that person, you'll really connect with the person. And when you put yourself in their shoes, that will make you so much more honest and sincere and focused on them that it will automatically, you'll be saying things and coming out with things which genuinely help them and benefit them, inshallah.
Yep. Sister Zainab's got a question here, and I think it's a very important question. How long did it take to develop the Go Rap? So Go Rap's been developed I mean, even before it was called the Gorab, it was called something else. The basic idea that you go back to the simple core of Islam, this is not unique to the Gorab. It's not unique to our era. It's a basic message which people have used throughout time. In fact, you will find this message in the Quran. Musa alayhi salam is talking to his nation. So he's talking to Fir'aun. Fir'aun is constantly trying to distract him. Musa alayhi salam brings him back to God, Lord of the East and the West, Lord of you and your forefathers, again and again. Fir'aun kept trying to distract him with different things. That's basically what the Gorab is. Now, one of the reasons why it's been highlighted as a method is because many du'at, especially in the Western world, they realize that we're continuously talking to people about, all these issues, but we're not giving them the core message of Islam. So the whole reason that it was formalized in this way is so that we don't go off into rabbit holes of discussing uncomfortable questions or politics or whatever. You stick to the core. And the core is God's existence, oneness, revelation, and prophethood. Now, Imran, we only have a few minutes left. So let's see if there's any questions. Okay, I'm not going to answer this question. I'm going to get Imran to answer it, because at the end of the day, the Dawah is for philosophers and peasants and everybody, right? I mean, it's not an exclusive club. So, Imran, how would you convince a person of Gorab if they believe in evolution?
So you want to sort of first highlight the 5 different models in evolution, and no, you don't do anything. You don't do any of this, basically. So look, if someone says, I believe in evolution, I don't believe in God, you may want to quickly clarify for them the basic point, which is, look, evolution doesn't mean God doesn't exist, right? That's a very simple logical point. It'll hit home, and then you go into, okay, but look, understanding that, let's talk about God. Why is it then, therefore, you still deny God? Ask them for their reasons. Why is it they may not believe in God, etc., etc. Whatever you get from them, and then address them. Maybe give them an argument, like we will share some arguments in the Gorab, and then go from there. God's existence, oneness, revelation, prophethood. And if they're still interested in evolution at the end, then send them to Darwinian delusions. Khalas, finished. That's it. Simple as that.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, people are simple. People are simple, right? So if someone says they believe in human chimpanzee ancestry, they believe in Darwinian evolution, say to them, so what? Gorab, God's existence and the evidences for it, oneness and the evidence for it, revelation and the evidence for it, and prophethood and the evidence for it. Gorab is independent of somebody believing in evolution or believing in anything else. The truthfulness of Gorab is independent of Darwinian evolution, Lamarckian evolution, or anything else. Someone says they believe in multiverse or string theory. Who cares? The truthfulness of Gorab is independent of anything else. And this is extremely important to understand, right? We sometimes seem to think you have to clarify every single doubt, every single misconception. You don't have time for that. We have very short lives. You just get to the point and you say, look, at the end of the day, do you believe in God? Do you believe in God? Do you believe in revelation? Do you believe in prophethood? Okay, here's a good example. What do you think about those who say religion will be refuted in the future through science? Now, later on, we may cover this, right? But let's stick to the simple formula that we were saying earlier, right, Imran? How do we address to this if we stick to a simple formula?
So look, if someone asks a question, I say, look, it's a very good question. Thank you for asking the question. It's quite an intriguing question. Now, before I specifically delve into this question, let me share some of the sort of basic core concepts of Islam with you first, which may help you understand this. Bang, get to the point. God's existence, oneness, revelation, prophethood. By the end of it, they should be able to realize why that this will not be the case in the future.
Yeah. For example, somebody may say, what if science one day brings the dead back to life, right? And in the Quran, God, and in Islam, only God can bring the dead back to life. You don't need to give them the physics of consciousness to show it's not possible. You just say to them, okay, that's a question I've never heard before, but I just want to, speak to you about, do you believe in God? Like, do you believe in one? Just get to the point. Yeah, everything else doesn't really matter. It really doesn't.
And it's good you're sharing these questions, bro. Because look, again, just to reiterate the point, we're not saying that there's not a space or place to answer these questions. Of course there is. But the objective here right now, what we're trying to do through this training every day, is to give you the most effective way to deliver the message of Islam, which is the essence of da'wah.
So
That's what we're trying to give you, the core.
Let me stop you again. Here we have another question. Yeah. How should we respond to someone who's convinced that the universe and all its laws are eternal, therefore there's no need for God, or if there is no God?
Again, it's a very interesting question. I'm sure I'd love to engage, we'll engage with this and see if we can get to the bottom of this. But before we do that, let me share some basics of Islam with you, some core concepts and ideas which may help us understand this better. Get to the point, God's existence.
Because at the end of the day, someone may say, oh, what about multiverse? I mean, we don't need to delve into every single scientific idea. Yeah. Someone says, I don't believe in God because butterfly effect. I mean, there could be anything. I mean, some people say things which are incoherent, right?
Yeah.
We just need to stick to the basics. Uncomfortable questions, which are true, say, look, good question, but in order for you to understand the answer, you need to understand the foundations of Islam. And a question which is untrue, saying, look, we don't believe that, but just get to the point of the Quran. Now, I just want to mention that the thing which I said yesterday as well, that we have all of our training online, ayera.org. Actually, let me bring out the website before I actually forget. So we have all of our training actually on our website, which is available free on training.ayera.org. And we're going to be going live every single day, like today, taking questions from you guys. And I think the questions you guys asked is perfect, because we were talking about focus, and a lot of these questions are exactly what sometimes people do to try and get you distracted. So, we're covering those basic ways of actually dealing with this. Jazakallah khair for actually joining us, and join us again tomorrow at the same time, 6 p.m. British Standard Time, for another part of the Go Wrap. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.